Do you want to know how you can make a 300% return from the Nvidia chip ban? Then watch this video right to the very end. Felix here, I'm going to walk you right through how Nancy Pelosi sold her shares literally just before this ban was announced, which is just staggeringly corrupt in my view. Of course, I could be wrong, but that's my view. Now, secondly, how much does this make the stock drop? What actually percentage of revenue and profit and growth is impacted by this? How can we trade it? What was the reaction yesterday? What are the big banks saying? That's what this video is all about. So Morgan Stanley already coming out with a cut to their price target, only $30, so not like the end of the world, but still minus $30. And they're calling them draconian curbs. So what are they? We need to understand that. CNY, which is China News, they said the US export restrictions will block sales of 2 high-end AI chips created for the Chinese market and top-of-the-line gaming chips. The same will be true for Intel and AMD GPUs, by the way. This isn't just an Nvidia story. Before we get into that, and I'll teach you everything I just said, if you ever thought that the way I trade options was really complicated, then I've listened. I've made a program where we trade just one stock with an 80% win ratio back-tested in the last 8 years. And I will teach you the core part of this strategy for free on Sunday. Sign up, grab one of the last spots available, 10 a.m. New York time, felixrenz.org/webinar. And I'll never mention it again. Well, I might just mention it one more time, possibly. It's one of those things. Okay, here is the Nvidia statement. This is Nvidia right straight from the horse's mouth. And they're saying that the export controls now impose additional license requirements for exports to China and certain other countries like Saudi, UAE, Vietnam. And that's the A100. It's really about the A800 and the H800 and a few others, RTX 4090. Isn't that the chip I've got? Lucky me, hey? I just bought it in Hong Kong. Ooh. Any systems that incorporates one or more of these integrated circuits is covered by the new licensing requirement. And of course, the US government won't give you a license. So it's basically a ban. And they're therefore saying the interim final rule is effective 30 days after its publication. Given the strength of demand for our products worldwide, we do not anticipate that additional restrictions will have near-term meaningful impact on our financial results. And what does that mean? Well, expect a humongous 30 days of sales. Basically, Nvidia is working on all cylinders and shipping absolutely everything they can in the direction of China. And we already know that major Chinese customers have been stockpiling. So this is just sanctions, by the way, never work. Give me one example in history where sanctions have worked. There isn't one. None, basically. Never, ever worked. It's a complete waste of time. It just makes people feel good. And why is Biden doing this? Because he's worried about Trump being stronger on China, and therefore he's throwing this out there. I think that's the only reason. I think it's complete nonsense. But they're going to have a monster sales and deliveries for the next 30 days. And then what happens? Well, this is Wall Street to take on it. This is the worst case scenario. So worst case scenario is where there is zero contribution from China for the data center business. That would have a 20% impact on long-term earnings per share potential. And if that's permanent and long-lasting, so Nvidia can't have a workaround. And last time they banned some chips, Nvidia came up with chips that just weren't covered by this. So what's Nvidia going to do this time around? Well, they're very likely to come up with 1 or 2 or 3 more chips that are not covered by this, and they're going to call them the, F33 or some random code, and they're going to ship those to China until the US realizes that, and 6 months later bans those again. It's a cat and mouse thing. So that would, if there is no workaround, and it really is the worst case scenario, zero sales, then they would think it would drop their price target by about $120, and their price target right now is $600. What does that mean? Well, let's ask a calculator. 120 over 600 is 20% lower price target, basically. So minus 20% on the share price. Now, does the market believe that? No. zoom out for a moment. So here is a weekly stock chart, and I like looking at weekly stock charts. I strongly recommend it. It's kind of where trading started from, us all looking at weekly things, and of course now it's daily and minute and seconds and all that sort of thing. I generally work on a daily chart, but weekly is good. And what can you see? Well, we're at the all-time high ATH zone. Yeah, we're consolidating up there. We're just bobbing sideways. And yesterday's drop, can you see the drop? It's there. It's not really a lot, is it? And let's look at what the real reaction was yesterday. This is the reaction. So the stock fell to 420 something, recovered and closed at 439, which isn't lower than the last low, which is here. Had it been lower than the last low, and there's a lot of lows in one sentence, then it would have been a sell signal. But they closed above the last low, and therefore it isn't actually a sell signal, at least not in my book. I like my book. So what does this mean? Well, how can we make money out of it, and what's the support? I think that's really what we want to look at here. So how do we make money out of this? Well, I'm a contrarian, and I need to just warn you here. And all trades come with risk. It's not financial advice, just a former banker sharing the way his brain ticks, because that's what this is all about. We want to make 1 million people financially free, which is why we run all the seminars and we have a community and academy and everything else. What you could do here is set up a trade below the market at the last low. So basically at 408 would be our break even. And anywhere above 408, the straightest line in the world, is it? Microsoft, come on. I know you've built in a straight line feature for people like me who can't make straight lines. Thank you. Anywhere above 408, we make cha-ching. How much cha-ching do we make? Well, it's a 10-day trade, so it's 10 days. And potentially, we make a 13% return, which is not bad. How likely is it that we make that? Well, we have an 84% probability of doing that. So it's a pretty reasonable setup, unless you think the market's going to wake up today and go, oh, there was a chip ban. I didn't realize that. I was asleep yesterday. We didn't know anything about it. Oh my God, hit the sell button, freak out. We've kind of already done the freaking out. We freaked out till here. We've come back up. And now we're just asking, will someone please take the trade of us? I'm not saying you should do the trade. You need to understand how these things work before you do something like this. But that's the sort of thing that I would do, is a contrarian setup to something like this. I love bad news, actually. It's a marvelous thing to trade. You wait till it's announced, you see the reaction, and then you jump on the bandwagon late. Most of the time that works. Doesn't always work. So where's the support? Well, the second thing you can see from a chart like this is that, actually, let me open it. Might be a little easier. So we go into optionswatch.io, and you're super welcome to do that as well. It's there's a free trial for it and everything else. It's a platform that we developed, by the way. It's not an endorsement. I don't endorse anything. So here we go. So what can we see? Well, for the week, what are we looking for? We're looking for these great big red lines here. That's where the market's positioned. So you can see the market's positioned at $400. 400 is your real support for the week. You go out another week, still $400. You go out till the next month's options expiration, and it's still $400. So the market is hedging at $400, and it makes sense because it's quite cheap to do. So you could literally buy protection for $600, which isn't really a lot for 100 shares. So it's not a lot. It's reasonably affordable. It's typically the sort of place where people hedge. So is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Well, that's really for you to say. But what I'm saying is that I think this is an overreaction. We've been here before. We know sanctions don't work. How does the US police this? How do they know that a chip that is sold to a guy in Singapore doesn't end up in Malaysia or in Indonesia or in Thailand and then somehow finds its way into China, for example? And the next story, of course, is that there is more to this, which is as long as the data is as good as this, as long as revenue numbers quarterly look like this little chart here. As long as net income, which is just a fancy word for profit, have a bar like this, and as long as cash flow is this extraordinary chart here, then the stock isn't going to tank. Look at margins. They're making chips. Okay, I know they're outsourcing most of it, but still, they're making chips with a gross profit margin of like 70%. That's like a software company. Their net margin is 45%. That's like a Visa card payment processor or something. It's just an insanely profitable business. As long as those numbers are like that, this isn't going to tank. Now, the other thing announced today is Foxconn, another major Taiwanese company that builds all the iPhones and so on. They're going to build, this is literally out today, 2 hours ago, AI data factories using Nvidia chips and software by Reuters. No, the software isn't by Reuters. It would never function. It would always be late and be mostly wrong. No, also software by Nvidia. So basically, Foxconn is going to build sort of massive data centers, and Foxconn has the majority of their factories in mainland China. Again, how do you prevent Foxconn putting up one of these factories in Taiwan or in Vietnam or in somewhere that isn't impacted by these export restrictions, and then has a customer that has some linkage to Chinese customers? I mean, it's just, you can't police this stuff. It's impossible. It's just impossible and pointless. All this is point scoring by a pointless politician who's achieved very little. That goes for actually pretty much all politicians. And trying to get reelected desperately, which is why they're faking so much stuff out there. Now, what can you do about it? Come and join me on Sunday. Learn to trade literally just one stock with an 80% win ratio. And this is ideal for people who are new to trading, for beginners, for people with busy lives and busy jobs. Sign up. I'll teach you the core strategy. felixschwenzer.org/webinar. And you know I'm not a huge Nvidia bull. I think they're doing some funny business with their revenue pulling forward, but this is going to pull revenue even further forward because there's going to be massive revenue coming in the next 30 days. If you wanted to really ban something, you'd ban it like this. But the way the US operates is a little bit too slow. So it's just a pointless exercise. And I don't think it's going to harm Nvidia all that much, to be honest with you. I just can't see this being policed. And there we are. If you enjoyed this video, smash the subscribe button. And I thank you for watching.